So this was just something that I got a bug to do, and I didn't really know. I'd never checked it before, but it's interesting. So the word atonement, because people are fascinated by this concept of Jubilee years beginning on the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 25:9 specifically, but just looking at the word atonement, interestingly enough, it appears 70 times in the Bible. But what I wanted to do was, and this is studylight.org, it's my interlinear study. Sorry I've got all these ads here, but I can't do anything to get rid of them. They're not mine. They're just the websites, but they're irritating. I know, I get it. Leviticus 25:9. Again, this is a verse that a lot of people try to link to Jubilee years. Just did a video about that. Not going to go over old stuff. But what I wanted to do this time was isolate the word atonement and see if all of these 70 references kind of lead back to the same place in the New Testament. Because I wanted to understand where conceptually. An interlinear study is done for the purpose of identifying a word in the Hebrew Old Testament and then linking it to a word in the Greek New Testament. That's interlinear. And so what I wanted to do was find out where this concept of atonement presents itself in the New Testament. Is it related to the beginning of the 70th week? Is it related to some part of Revelation? Because a lot of people think that Revelation sounds like it's written with a Day of Atonement, quote unquote, overview, which it is not. But a lot of people think that. And I think part of the reason they believe that or read that into it is because they believe that the Day of Atonement is related to the beginning or the ending of it. And so they just kind of read that into the overview. So I wanted to just look at this and say, okay, there's this idea out there that perpetuates a belief system about specific times of year and specific events that are maybe linked to the Day of Atonement relating to the end times. So I just want to look at this verse where a lot of people start this theory from to build upon. And I want to look at this word atonement and I want to see where its counterpart is in the New Testament and with what action or activity or, kind of like where we are. So this is here. It is the Hebrew word Kippur, which is atonement. It's the day of, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. But it relates down here, just RAH is the Septuagint. This brings up the Greek rendering of the Hebrew Old Testament. So here is the Greek word hemera, it's day. And here is the atonement. Appeasing propitiation. So that is the Greek rendering, the Greek translation of this Hebrew atonement, Kippur. And interestingly enough, it presents itself two times in the New Testament, which is strange because when you go back to this Bible Gateway, atonement, when you're looking for that word specifically to appear in the English translation, it's only one time and in Romans. So how can this interlinear study tell us that there are two references in the KJV New Testament Greek and it's the word propitiation? So I'm like, okay, we're going for context here, right? We're not just looking to identify where the word atonement shows and then make a broad sweeping statement about every time the word atonement shows it's related to the Day of Atonement. We're looking at like a one-to-one relationship between concepts and specific words and how they translate. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be G2434. So we're going to go here to Blue Letter Bible, and G2434, it tells us 1 John 2:2 and 1 John 4:10 are where that word atonement from Leviticus 25:9 shows itself in the Greek New Testament, which is the Greek word hilasmos in these two verses. And what did those two verses say? He is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. And 1 John 4:10, herein is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son to be the propitiation for our sins, the atonement for our sins. And so what you have is the end of what Jesus began on the Day of Atonement. Leviticus 25:9, causing the trump of Jubilee to sound, it's the trump of Teruah to sound. On the 10th day of the 7th month, in the Day of Atonement, you shall make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. That was forward looking to day one of Jesus' ministry, where the Spirit anointed him to declare liberty via the forgiveness of sins. And as another Day of Atonement concept, before he did that, he had become the substitutionary sin bearer. That's the Leviticus 16 tie to Jesus' baptism, where the Spirit descended from heaven and abode upon him as a dove and anointed him to preach liberty via the forgiveness of sins. So you have 2 Day of Atonement concepts embodied in the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Him assuming the role of the scapegoat, which is substitutionary sin bearer, and him declaring liberty via the forgiveness of sins. And then 3.5 years later, plus 4 days, he became the substitutionary atonement, the propitiation for those sins that he had taken upon himself as the substitutionary sin bearer or as the scapegoat. And so what I would really like to help people understand, if they're still dealing with this cognitive dissonance that is trying to read the Day of Atonement into the second coming of Christ or the commencement of the 70th week or something related to his second coming, I would like to disabuse you of the notion that it relates to anything future. It relates to something past, and specifically to the beginning of Jesus' ministry, the substitutionary sin bearer, and the end of his ministry plus 4 days, which is the substitutionary atonement or the propitiation of those sins he had agreed to bear. So there is nothing regarding the Day of Atonement as it is conceptualized in Leviticus 25:9 that leads you anywhere other than the cross. That leads you anywhere other than the beginning of his ministry, which was the Day of Atonement, and subsequently the ending of which was the cross, where he became that propitiation for our sins. He atoned for our sins. He gave his life for our sins. There is nothing in there, not a single thing that speaks of anything yet to come or future or the 70th week or anything like that. It is done. It is finished, more appropriately.